So, who are my clients? Well, I would say that they're all pretty much normal, upper middle class. Some are wealthy. I have doctors, lawyers. I have business owners. I have retired grandpas. I have fathers. I have people who work in the church. I have men that are married with children. I have men that are married that have children that no longer live in their home. I have men who all have pretty much one thing in common, that is a human need for intimate contact. Most of the men, I would say, are lacking in the relationships, physical, intimate contact. And most of the men, I would say, have a very human need, which is physical human contact and sexual contact. I don't see that as a criminal thing. I see it as a normal human thing. So my clients are not criminals. They're not abusive. I've never had a pimp. Oh, except for there was one in Nevada that actually ran a legal brothel. I would say he was a pimp. And how do I define a pimp? I would say it's someone who is very controlling of your life, who dictates to you who you see, when you see them, how much you charge, how much they get from you, and pretty much everything in your life is dictated, and you are treated like a prisoner or like you're not even like human. So yeah, I did have a pimp in Nevada, and I only went there because I wanted to work legally, and I didn't realize how abusive it would be. And that place did close down, but to tell you the truth, I don't trust any of them because any of them can get abusive, and they all take a lot of your money, and they even search your rooms and make sure you're not keeping any of your tips. They never did that to me in Australia because the brothels there are legit and they're in the city. But the brothels in Nevada are all ran by organized crime. So yeah, those are pimps out there. But other than that, I've never had one. I don't want a pimp. I don't need a pimp. I run my own ads as an independent escort, as an independent provider. I am well established, well reviewed, and I suggest that if anyone ever wants to see a provider, they should always make sure that the provider they see, that they are well reviewed and well established, to make sure they're legit and make sure that you're not going to be taken advantage of, because there are sex workers out there that are only in this for a very short time, and they're only in this to rip people off because they only want to make a quick buck. They're not in it for a long time. And there are some that work for shady escort companies or a shady pimp, and they will try to rob you. And there are also cops out there that you need to be careful of. So always make sure your provider is well reviewed and well established, meaning that she's been around for a while. Like, don't just see someone who's only had an ad up for a few days or a week or something. Make sure if you're going to see someone, make sure that they've been around for at least a year, and make sure that they have lots of reviews, like at least, I would say, over 20 reviews or something. I mean, anyone can fake 2 or 3 reviews, but they're not, if they're going to fake a review, they're not going to have more than, like, I would say more than 10. No way. It would be too difficult, especially on legitimate review sites, where you have to actually have many different IPs if you were going to try to fake a review. So just make sure it's a very well established review site that's very reputable, like TER, or I don't know, like maybe some kind of place where women in your area advertise that also have reviews on their ads. And just also be aware, of the current trends of what's going on in your area. I think right now the cops are kind of they were focusing on Backpage, but it looks like the charges on, of course, I don't recommend Backpage at all because you can't really, well, unless you really want to do your homework and look up the girl, Google her name and phone number and see if she's around anywhere else. But I would never recommend seeing somebody who only has an ad on Backpage. That would be not a good idea. Um, Make sure that she has more ads than just that, and make sure she's been around for a while. But it looks like what the cops are going to do next, I can't say for sure, but if you look at the history of the past 5 or 6 years, I mean, the new war on drugs is the war on sex workers and their clients. And if you look at the past 5 or 6 years, they seem to be going after a lot of different places where we advertise to stay safe. And one of the things that seems like they're going after now are sites with reviews. So just make sure maybe like the company is not based in the U.S. It's best to go for websites where providers advertise that are based from out of Germany, where sex work is actually legal. They have legal zones and they have brothels in Germany. So yeah, you want to look for not .com sites, but like maybe .net or something like that. Um, and so yeah, it seems like cops are going after a lot of sites. Like they went after a place called it was a website called My Red Book, and that's been a few years now since they took that site down. But it had reviews, and you could look at the girl's ad and read her reviews on that site, and they took it down. So that's the current trend right now. But I think in the future, what the next thing will be, instead of advertising on websites, I think the next big thing is going to be apps. So they now have apps for sex workers in New York City that are based out of Germany. So it's going to be very, very difficult in the future for these governments, cops and organizations that like to profit off of criminalization of the adult industry. It's going to be very difficult for these organizations to, solicit money for donations to stop sex work. It's going to get more and more difficult as more and more companies are no longer going to be based in the U.S. They're going to be based from places where sex work has been legal for about 15 years now, like Germany and maybe Australia and all different parts of Western Europe. Actually, the U.S. is pretty much the only Western country that acts more like a Middle Eastern country when it comes to sex work. Because if you look around the world, most Western countries have some type of legalization of sex work. And it seems like the U.S. is like the only Western country left that treats women so harshly that are in the adult industry and gives them very, very little, if no rights at all. Like I was trying to explain to you earlier about the brothels, how cruel they are. I won't go into all that right now, but they are very cruel places to work, and I don't understand how those can be legal and yet you can't just leave and work independently on your own. I mean, it's absolutely insane, nuts, backwards as you can get, as backwards as any Middle Eastern country, probably even more. I would say, believe it or not, I think the U.S. is even more backwards than the worst places, maybe even in the Middle East, from what I've heard. Um, I think in the Middle East, it's okay as long as you do a temporary marriage. I'm not saying that I would want that. I would not want to marry my client for a night just to do sex work legally. But I'm just saying that the U.S. is the most repressed country in the world, pretty much, I would say. Absolutely, actually, from my own experience. So anyway, if you're a client or if you are just curious about clients of sex workers, there's an organization, and I will leave the link below. It's called COSWAC. That stands for Clients of Sex Workers Allied for Change. And you can read many real stories of clients on this site, and it's also a very good resource for you if you are a client or thinking about becoming a client. I would recommend going on this site and reading a lot of their very, very good information on here, and it would give you a lot of real information instead of all this fake propaganda media stuff. As I've said before in one of my videos, propaganda used to be illegal in the US until Obama signed a bill in 2012. You can Google it, I'm not making this up, to legalize propaganda. And I would hope that we would get that law back in and stop legalizing propaganda, because you cannot believe anything you hear on the news, I would say, anymore, because it's all legal propaganda now. And it shouldn't be that way, for obvious reasons and for not so obvious reasons. Again, I'll put the link below. Take care.